In today's episode, Rob Da Costa is going to show you how to create an AI clone of yourself to scale bigger and faster without having to build a big team and manage employees. So stick around. If you want to build a legitimate, profitable online business without shiny objects, without the hypey gimmicks, and without the stress and overwhelm, if you want to make more money without having to be present online all day, every day, pumping out content that nobody sees and hustling DMs to generate leads and sales, then this is the place for you. Welcome to the Digital Trailblazer podcast, your online business university, where you'll learn how ordinary people start from ground zero with no influence, no email list or audience to sell to, and no business or marketing experience, and go from working 9-to-5 jobs to building successful 6- and 7-figure online businesses and all the steps in between. Learn the strategies that worked and what didn't. Learn the mistakes that they made and how to avoid them, and then learn their plans for scaling their businesses and taking things to the next level. All so that you can build your business faster and easier and make more money without sacrificing the things that are important to you in your life. I'm your host, Leah Ray Getz, and with me is my husband, Todd. Now let's get to it with today's guest. Welcome, Trailblazers. I'm super excited for this conversation. I think AI is a very hot topic, but a lot of folks don't understand how to really unlock it, to use its power to help them in their business. They're just kind of getting excited and playing with it. So this will be a great conversation. We're excited to have you with us, Rob. Can you give us a little context before we dive into all the pieces of the strategy? Like, give us a little context of where this all came from for you and like your background.
Sure. So I am a marketing agency coach, and for the past 18 years, I've been helping marketing agencies grow in a profitable, sustainable, and enjoyable way. And prior to that, I ran my own agency, so I kind of stood in the shoes of my audience. And then the pandemic came along. So traditionally, I did most of my work sort of in one-to-one, face-to-face, or in group settings, face-to-face. And the pandemic came along. Unfortunately for me, just before that, I'd started my first proper online kind of membership program. I dabbled in online courses before, failed spectacularly, and then thought, okay, I need to do this properly. And so fortunately that had launched just before the pandemic, and it put me in good stead because, you know, people still needed to work. They wanted to be part of a community. So my business thankfully thrived fairly well because I was one of the types of business in the UK that got absolutely no support from the government. So I needed to have income coming in still. And that's grown, and I'm kind of old and grey, as you can see now, and thinking about retirement in the not too distant future in the next few years. So I was thinking, how can I take what is basically 30 plus years of agency knowledge, everything I've learned, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the things that I've been successful at helping my clients with, how can I encapsulate that into some kind of knowledge base? And I'm a bit of a techie nerd, so I've been playing with AI since it came out in 2023, I think, when this ChatGPT thing came along. And like you said in your introduction, a lot of people are sort of dabbling with it. They're either scared of it, or they're perhaps using it to help them create a bit of content or maybe some imagery, but they're not really using it in a more kind of strategic way. So I started looking into how I could clone my knowledge in a way that could help my clients. And I think the other kind of catalyst for me, well, I'm sure a lot of people will relate to this, is that my audience are asking me the same questions over and over and over and over again. And wouldn't it be great if there was someone who wasn't going to be grumpy every time they had to answer those questions and could actually be available 24/7 and answer whatever the question, big or small, is, and get an immediate response? And so that led me down the route of saying, okay, is there some tech out there that I can use to start doing this? And in full disclosure, I'm on the third platform that I've used to do this, because the first platform promised a lot and didn't really deliver it very well. The second platform was great, but was starting to head in a direction that wasn't where I wanted to go. And then the latest platform I'm on is so far so good, and doing some really exciting things like having audio and video. So you can actually have a video call with me, my client. I'm not quite sure if I should call it me or it or he, but you could have a video call with me and it will look just like I look now. It's got the same shirt on as me, actually. Or you can have an audio call, or you can chat on WhatsApp, or you can have a text-based chat. So I'm really excited about the potential of that, and the fact that I can support my audience 24/7, and I can answer those big and small questions for them, and it doesn't involve me being available all the time.
So I think one of the things that a lot of people are really unsure about is, with all this AI stuff, like, where's the best place to get started? Because I know that people are leveraging AI to do all sorts of things in their business. And there's some concerns about using it in some ways rather than others. But if you're just looking for an easy way to just take things off your plate so you can get more done, what do you suggest would be the very first thing, like a coach, course creator, an online business owner? What do you think is like the best place to get started with AI?
I think the best place to get started is not even think about AI, but start off by looking at your business and where are your biggest bottlenecks. And then that should be the one area that you start with. I mean, I think the problem is we're seeing every single day new tools coming around that are promising us, to create amazing videos or whatever it is. And people are playing with those, but they're not really thinking about how do I encapsulate that into the workflow of my business. So my advice would be to go and look at your business, look at where the bottlenecks are, and then pick that one key bottleneck. And that's where you start then researching what tools could support me in that bottleneck. And that's kind of what I did really, because my bottleneck was that I'm fundamentally a one-person business. I have a team of sort of remote social media people and VAs and stuff. Fundamentally, I'm a one-person business. So how do I scale myself so that I'm not having to ask people's questions whenever, but also my audience isn't having to wait 12 hours to get a response from me? So that was my bottleneck. And that's where I started to try and solve the problem. So I think the problem at the moment is that we are bombarded, and this isn't going to change anytime soon. I'm doing a presentation with my group on Tuesday next week about AI in 2025, and things are not slowing down. They're going to get faster. So one thing I'd say to everybody is that you shouldn't be scared of AI. And if you are, you're going to get beaten by a similar business to yours that is embracing it. That's the first thing. But the second thing is don't get distracted by all these shiny objects everywhere that are telling us do this, do that. And it is really difficult to separate the good from the bad, because there are a lot of tools that are promising to do great things, and you buy them or you play with them and you realize actually they're not very good. And this is taking me as much time as it would to do it the traditional way. So identify the bottleneck in the workflow in your business, go research tools specifically to help you solve that bottleneck. And if there are AI tools that can do it, then fantastic. And then that's where I would start. So that sort of doesn't necessarily say where each person should start, but it does say, look at your business first of all and do it that way. Take a top-down approach rather than a distracted by all these new shiny AI tools.
Right. Now, I know for us in our business, like one of the things that we use AI for is to help us to create like show notes for our podcast and everything, because we're, it's something that we have to do several times a week, and it can take a lot of time just coming up with, okay, what's a good angle? How do I write this? And all that. So that's one of the things that we leverage AI for currently. I know one of the problems, kind of touch on this a little bit, was that there's a bunch of tools out there that can do this type of thing. And you can waste a lot of time trying to figure out like which tool you want to use and testing different ones out. And I guess for me, the way I found the tool that we use was just from a recommendation, and it seemed to work. And so that's what I'm using. But I don't even know what else is out there. Like I know I could do a Google search, but I don't even know if that's going to bring everything up. I know that there's a lot of new tools coming out. How do you even find these things? Like what's your process for even finding a good tool to use?
Well, I think, first of all, you've given a really good example of identifying potential bottleneck in your business and then solving it. So if you're creating a podcast, I have a podcast as well. I create a podcast every week. We all know how long that takes to create show notes and timestamps and social media posts and everything else. So if AI can support us with that, suddenly it's like having 3 other staff that are doing a lot of the heavy lifting. My view about AI, which I'll just say before I answer your question, Todd, is that AI will get us from 0 to 60. And the human needs to get us from 61 to 100. And I think that's true at the moment. It's not always going to be the case, but at the moment that's true. So AI won't replace people. It will just elevate what people can do. It will give people more capacity. It'll enable people to work in a more strategic way. But to come back to your question, I think, Todd, you've got to find 2 or 3 sources of valuable information that you follow. So there are lots of, for example, really good AI newsletters. So I subscribe to a couple of AI newsletters, and they come out daily or weekly, and I do read them, and I do go quickly check what they're suggesting, because if you end up listening to every man and his dog, you are going to get overwhelmed. And so I'm guilty of that. Sometimes I watch YouTube videos and there's AI experts on there. So my advice would be find 1 or 2 or 3 people that you really respect. Maybe you've listened. I found the newsletters I'm subscribed to because I listen to their podcasts. So I go to the gym and listen to podcasts, and AI podcasts, the ones I listen to at the moment, and they spoke a lot of sense. So it made sense for me to sign up to their newsletter, and that's giving me the latest stuff. But you know what? It's a bit like Black Friday, right? We should only buy things when we need them. But of course, what Black Friday sales want us to do is they want us to buy everything that we don't actually need. So I think with AI, you need to go back to what I said and try and figure out your bottleneck and then look for a specific tool for that. Now, you may have to try a few tools. Like I said, I'm on the third platform with my AI clone because the first two didn't quite deliver, but the third one hopefully is, but it may not be the last platform I use because then tomorrow there'll be somebody else. I launched my AI coach and I got approached by at least 3 other companies that I've never heard of that are getting into this space. And it's a race, it's like a space race. It's a race that people are in, and there's going to be a lot of losers in this race, and there's going to be 2 or 3 winners. And, we've got a bank that we are investing in the 2 or 3 winners and not in the losers, but that's just the way it is with new technology. So I would say pick 2 or 3 sources that you trust and just focus on them, because otherwise we'll waste so much time. The other thing I'd say is if you have a team, have someone in your team be your AI evangelist. Have that person who can dedicate some of their time, like half a day a week, to actually researching and then presenting to the rest of the team. And if you don't have a team, then you should dedicate some of your time to doing it, but just try compartmentalizing that time so that you're not getting overwhelmed. I mean, there is so much hype at the moment, and rightly so, because I think what's coming down the line, one of the things that I'm going to talk to my team about next week is what's going to be big in 2025 is the concept of an AI agent. And an AI agent is an AI tool that will be proactive. So you can piece a number of things together. So for example, if you were researching software, you could task it with going and finding the best software and then finding the best prices and then seeing their discount vouchers and then looking at reviews and getting it to put a report together. You could use these AI agents to go and negotiate, if you're an ad agency or something, to go and negotiate the best rates. So it's pretty scary because of the way AI works at the moment is there's a human interacting with it, asking it to do a task, and then the AI does a task. Well, the AI agents are going to change that because they're going to take over from the human. So that's going to happen next year. And what goes hand in hand with that is the fact that AI speeds and inference abilities are going to massively improve next year. That's a really good thing for me because with my AI coach, when you talk to the video, and I can show you it if you want in a minute, but when you talk to the video, there's a slight lag because it's obviously got to go away, process it, and come up with a response. Well, that's going to change next year. And since the video component of my product has gone live in September, it's already got much better and faster. So I think we are bombarded with tons and tons of stuff. So pick someone who's going to be your expert, someone who gets excited by this stuff, and pick your 2 or 3 people that you are really interested in listening to and follow their advice. And then, it's a bit of trial and error, I think. It's the Wild West at the moment. So,
Yeah. And I think that's excellent advice. That should be common sense, but I think it's just not, because when I think about like for me and Leah, like one of the big things that we focus on is our health and diet and supplements and things like that. We don't have time to go out and look at all the research papers and figure out what supplements we should be taking or what our diet should be and things like that. So you're right. Like for something like that, we absolutely have a handful of experts that we go to. We listen to their podcasts, we look at their YouTube videos, we're seeing what they're saying. And we just kind of take their advice. We might do a little bit of our own research on the back end of that to see if it's something we really want to do. But for the most part, that shortcuts so much of the process. And for the most part, it's worked really well. Now, the next part of this, I think that there's a fear. So actually, before I get to that, the really interesting thing that you brought up, that is the reason why we have you on the show, is the idea of actually cloning yourself to deliver your coaching or your training for you to support your existing clients. It's really exciting, but also really scary in some aspects. Tell us more about this process. Like, first of all, how do you even train something to do that for you, or even from the beginning? Like
when I first got the platform I was using, the previous platform, I was like uploading absolutely everything. So PDFs and videos and podcast episodes and group call recordings, and I was just uploading it. And that old adage of garbage in equals garbage out was very true, because you have to start thinking about how an AI will process the data you're putting in. And it's not clever enough yet to just process data that is in a very unordered way, like a video transcript. So I ended up painfully deleting everything and starting again. The platform I'm on now is a bit better, and I've uploaded 1.4 million words of my content so far. So that is, all the ebooks, all of the blogs on my website, all of my tons and tons and tons, hundreds of hours of video trainings, some of the group call that I do with my community, my weekly podcast, everything else gets uploaded into there. And it's getting really clever at interpreting it. So it's not that painful to do. You just have to think like, how will the AI interpret this? So sometimes having a question and answer format is a really good way of doing it, because someone says, how do I go about niching my agency? And you've got a question that's sort of around that, then it's going to understand that the answer is connected to that and it's going to pick it up. So, but again, it's got a lot better since I started with it. So I think you have to think about, where are the sources of your knowledge kept? And for most of us, it will be like in our website, guides, our PDFs, our ebooks. It will be, if we have an online program, it'll be in our online content and a YouTube channel, podcast, and so on. And then, of course, you've got to decide what you want it for, because, of course, a lot of people, and let me be really clear here, this isn't a chatbot. So, you see a lot of websites now with a little speech bubble in the corner. You can click on it and it can say, how can I help you? And you can ask it questions. A chatbot is basically trained on, here's a question, here's an answer. And if you ask a question that isn't in its library of questions, it won't be able to answer it. Whereas a true AI coach clone can actually have multi-turn conversations. So in other words, it can answer a question, it will give you an answer, then it will ask you something else. Or you might ask it a question and it might say, I don't quite understand you. Let's just dig into this a bit more before I give you an answer. So you have more of a coaching session. And what I think is really exciting and a big motivation for me, and I think this should be true for everybody, is this ability to help people immediately when they need the help without me being involved. So the way I have my signature coaching program called the Self-Running Agency, and that's been like a mastermind in the past, where we have group calls, people can submit questions to me, we have guests doing training, all that kind of stuff. Well, I created another version of that called the Self-Running Agency Blueprint. This has no live calls at all, but every single module is supported by the coach. So they'll get to an end of that module and it will say, right, have a conversation with the coach now. The coach will appear and it might say, upload your position document or upload whatever it is you've been working on, and the coach will review it and give them feedback. And if they want to dig into some of the content in the online training, perhaps they don't understand it or they want some more examples, then they can do that with the coach as well. So that's sort of where I'm headed in the future, is and I think every single person that has any kind of online content, whether it's a training course or a coaching program or whatever, should be thinking about this. And the more I talk to people about this, the more they start saying to me, Rob, can you help us with this? And it's like, yeah, I don't really want to start another business. I'm 60. I'm not about to start. I could start another business to go and help people create their own coaches. I think I'd do pretty well with that. I absolutely believe that every single course creator, content creator should be thinking about how to have a coach. So just another example of what we're doing at the moment. So I have a personal YouTube channel, which is all about mine and my partner's travels. And we're actually creating a coach to go along with that YouTube channel, so people can ask travel questions. And if they're putting an itinerary together, they can have a conversation with the coach to help them with that itinerary. And so we're uploading lots of travel, obviously all our videos, but also other stuff as well that we can do. So that was another sort of implementation of that. But I think everyone that's got an online course should be thinking about, how can I support my audience? How can I help them get to the result quicker? And one of the ways I can do that is by being available for them 24/7. And that means having an AI coach, because I certainly don't want to be available 24/7. And you remember, an AI coach doesn't get grumpy. An AI coach isn't moody, and it's going to always answer the questions the best it can. And the other thing about this as well is that the more you have a conversation with your coach, the more it learns about you, and the more it's got a history of the conversation that you've had. So the more specific the help is. So that's something else that's exciting as well.
Interesting. So the way that you've programmed this AI coach inside of your course with all the different modules, at the end of each module, is it a coach that's trained specifically on that module and nothing else?
No, it's a coach that's trained on everything in the program. What I'm doing is saying, okay, you've got to the end of your building your email list. here's some of the questions that you might want to ask to keep your learning going. So I'm giving it some prompts. What I've done with my coaches, I've trained it on all of the frameworks and the tools that I teach my audience. So that if they're filling in a template, they can upload that template and the AI will understand it and be able to give them some sensible feedback. Whereas if you uploaded a template to ChatGPT or something, it's going to give you very generic, probably not very good advice. So a couple of things about this is that it's only trained on my content and it's not using other people's inputs to train the knowledge base. Because obviously one thing I don't ever everyone realizes is that every time you use ChatGPT or Claude or anything else, your information is helping train their model and it's in the public domain. So that gives people lots of privacy concerns. Whereas with what we're doing, if Todd is using his version, then it's learning about Todd, but it's not using your information to help Leah, who's also using the coach. So that's why you sign in, because then and of course the data isn't getting shared anywhere else either. So that sort of alleviates some of the privacy concerns people have.
Yeah. And that was the other thing I was going to ask about is the privacy concerns, because I know I wouldn't want my content, especially my paid content, right? And the stuff that people pay me big dollars for. I wouldn't want that to be training an AI that somebody else could be using to now just duplicate my coaching program or something.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely right. Yeah. I mean, obviously I'm at the behest of the platform that I'm using, and they assure me of all the privacy locks and checks they have. But you know what? Somewhere along the line, some AI tool is going to have a data privacy breach, and it's going to cause a huge concern with people. So, you have to put your trust in that they're not using my data anywhere else. And obviously I know that my coach isn't using the data that my clients use with anybody else in my ecosystem.
Now, what about maybe clients or other people in your program taking your recordings and using that to program their own AI? Is there a concern there, or how, is there a way to stop that?
That's a really good one. I don't know. I mean, at the moment, you can't kind of watermark your content like you could if you were having a YouTube video. You can put a watermark on it, so someone does steal it, they've got this watermark on there. You can't do that at the moment. But I suppose that you could say the same. If you forget AI for a minute, you could say the same thing, couldn't you? If you've got a digital course, what's to stop someone else stealing it all and then just rebranding it under their own brand and selling it? I mean, that's the risk we all take when we put stuff in the public domain. That's the risk that we take with our podcast or with our online course or anything else, I think.
Yeah. And that's a really good, because we've had our own courses pirated. That's one of the reasons why we do coaching now, is because we used to sell just online courses, and a couple of those got pirated. And I mean, it's easy for people to do, no matter how secure your video player is. It's crazy how they do that. And there's things you can do to mitigate that, but you're never going to prevent that.
I've had it happen to me as well, Todd, and it's easy for people to do it. And it's hard for you to get it taken down sometimes when you're trying to appeal to say this is actually my content. And anyway, but like I say, it's the risk that we sort of take, I think. And
I know for us, when we moved into more of a high ticket space with the clients that we were working with and who had access to what we were doing, it kind of took care of itself, because the pirators are cheapos who are looking for things that didn't cost them too much money and now can flip around and do stuff. So I think that kind of makes sense in this scenario too, is that if this is part of your higher ticket offer, then it's much.
Well, and also they can't, at the moment, they have no way of getting access to my knowledge base that is powering my coach. I mean, if I lost that, someone actually recently said to me, could they buy it off me? And I was like, no, I don't even know how much I'd sell it for, but I'm not going to sell that to you, because that is literally 30 years of my life encapsulated in this thing. And I'm not quite sure how much that is worth, but it's worth probably a lot more than you're going to be prepared to buy. I said, no. But at the moment, people can't pirate that. I mean, I'm sure, we all know that when good things come along, there's somebody bad trying to, use it in a bad way as well. So I'm sure that people are trying to get into that. But at the moment, that's safe, which is good.
Kind of going back to what you said earlier in the discussion about AI is never really going to fully replace human beings. And I think that's so true, because I think about when all this automation technology started coming out. When we first started our online business, and this was like in 2016, like we didn't have nearly the stuff that we have now. And even back then, chat bots and things like that were not nearly as sophisticated. There was the same fears back then about, oh, this is going to replace you or this is going to do that. And it never did. And what we learned about automation and now AI and things like that is that all automation and AI is really going to do is it's going to take your current process, take what you're currently doing and allow you to like supercharge it and go even faster. Which means that like if you're successful, it's going to make you even more successful. If you've got a great process, it's going to take that great process and make it 10 times better. But if you currently have a bad process that isn't working and you try to inject automation into that, all that's going to do is take your current rate of failure and make you fail even bigger and faster, right? And I feel like AI is going to be the same way, is that it can augment what you do. And if what you do is good, then great. But if what you do is not good, then, you be prepared.
Though, Todd, let's put a caveat on that because this is the scary bit. I think we have to say yet. I think we have to say it's not going to replace us yet. I think what you need to think about is that we are in a revolution like the Industrial Revolution. Imagine what everybody was saying in the 1800s when the Industrial Revolution was happening and all these manual workers were being laid off because machines were taking over. And I'm sure they had exactly the same conversations as we had now. When the computers came along, and calculators even came along, it was, oh my God, that's going to change everything. Well, I'm not sure it does. It just changes there'll be a whole new kind of career for people that, will no longer have to do those manual jobs, just like there was in the Industrial Revolution. The only thing I'd say about this, and I do think this is scary, and I don't have any expert foresight except for people smarter than me saying this, is that it's not going to replace us yet. I think it will end up replacing a lot of things that we do, which will either give us ability to scale, will give us the ability to upscale our own skills because we can work at a more strategic level, and it will also give us more free time. So who knows what that's going to look like? I don't know, but I do think that it's very exciting and we're not a million miles away. Like when you look at, like I said, I'm presenting about what's going to happen in 2025, it is really exciting. And I always say to people, look, 2 years ago, almost 2 years to the day, no one knew what this ChatGPT thing was. No one really knew what AI was. And 2 years later, look where we are. So just if you have that same gaze into 2 years' time from now, who knows where we'll be. But I think I'm much more excited than I am fearful of it. And I want to just reiterate, if anyone's listening to this and they're really scared about it and they're going, oh, that AI thing, awful, don't like it. Well, you're going to be the ones that are going to get left behind because your clients, this is the truth, our clients are going to demand more from us. They're going to demand more for less because, an AI coach can answer questions 24/7. Well, I'm not going to do that. So I can give more for less. It doesn't cost me a ton of money once I've implemented the systems. So I think our clients are going to ask for more for the less. I think those businesses, those coaches, those online courses, whatever you sell, who are very kind of commoditized, are the ones that will get replaced. And by the description of what you, Leah, said about your business, you've managed to elevate yourself away from that commoditized position. And I think that's going to be true for everybody. I think it's going to be easier. Think about it. If you're in the online course space, it is going to be extremely easy to create an online course. If someone's scared about being in front of a camera, well, guess what? They don't need to anymore. They can either have an avatar of somebody else or they can have an avatar of themselves. Like if you look at my avatar at the moment, you can tell it's not me, but I reckon within 6 months, you wouldn't know whether it is really me or not. In fact, I'm doing something next week with my podcast. I'm going to have my avatar on as a guest on the podcast. And I have no idea how that's going to go, but I'm going to do it live and I'm not going to edit it. I'm going to interview my avatar and see how that works. So I think it's going to elevate. We'll be able to create courses much more easily. We'll be able to do it much faster. We'll be able to learn quicker. So I think it is very exciting and yes, a bit scary, but more exciting than scary.
Yeah. And along those same lines, like one of the other questions I have is when you're programming your AI coach to help deliver and help answer questions, what level of detail or analysis can that AI coach give? Is it just like basic Q&A stuff? Or for example, like we'll have a client come in and they'll say, okay, I just put together my landing page for a lead magnet. Does the headline look okay? And I can look at the headline and say, okay, well, here's what I would do. Maybe we could reposition it like this. Or maybe I might dig for more information. Like, okay, so who's your target audience? What is the goal that you're helping them to achieve? I might ask all these questions to come up with a better headline. Can the AI coach do that? Or is it just basic?
I would really hope that if you use my coach, that's what it would do, the latter example of what you said, because without any context, you're going to get a very generic response, aren't you, can you give me some feedback on my headline? Interesting enough, with the platform I use, you decide that yourself. You decide how much of a coach you want it to be versus a consultant. So how much do you want it to probe into questions? You decide whether you want to have follow-on questions at the end of an answer, or in fact, one of the new features that came out last week, which is really great, is that it can now be dynamic about that. So it can ask a question if it thinks it's sensible to ask a question, but it won't always ask a question if it doesn't think, if it thinks it's at the end of the discussion. So it might say, okay, look, before I review your headline, who's the audience and what is it you're trying to achieve and what are you selling? And okay, now I understand that. Share the headline, give some feedback. What do you think about that? Okay, here's an action plan of what you need to do. Go away and do it. And then that would be the end of the conversation. Something else that's very exciting that I think is going to be a big thing for me, and I think for everybody, is that at the moment, the coach is very reactive. In other words, you have to go and talk to it to have a conversation. But when you think about it, if you've got a coach and that you're working with that coach every month, they might check in with you in the middle of the month and go, hey, Rob, you said you're going to do this, that, and the other. How are you getting on? Well, what's about to come out with the product I'm using, hopefully in the next month or so, is this ability to do that. So let's take an example. You might log in on a Monday morning and it's going to ping up and go, hey, Leah, how are you doing? How was your weekend? Let's set some goals for the week. And it's going to analyze your goals. It's going to tell you whether they're SMART goals or not. And it's going to help you break them down. And then on a Wednesday, it's going to check in with you again and go, hey, how are you getting on with those goals? Have you made a start on them, or are you stuck anywhere that you need some help with? And then on a Friday, it's going to check in with you again and go, hey, we're at Friday. How do you get on with the goals? What have you learned this week? Did you get them done? What do you need to do differently next week? So I'm excited by that proactivity that's coming along. So I think, to answer your question, Todd, a lot of the tools now, you can train them to be what you want them to be. And they're getting smarter at inferring things based on the context of the conversation, deciding whether a question is the right thing to do. If you put your headline of your landing page into ChatGPT, it's going to give you a response, and it might be helpful, but it might be totally generic and it might totally miss the point. And that's because it's using a very large language model to make a decision against, as opposed to the very specific skills that you've trained your AI on.
Yeah. And I think that's the other problem with like ChatGPT and some of the others out there, is that they're analyzing like the entire internet, aren't they? And I think I was reading an article that said something to the effect of, there's so much AI content out there right now that it's basically creating this feedback loop. And it's like it's training itself on information that isn't accurate, that's wrong, and it's making the AI worse. In a lot of
years. I mean, it's learning based on the knowledge that it's getting. And if that knowledge is a warped knowledge or is fake news or whatever, then that's what it's going to share with you. I mean, there's a thing in AI called guardrails where you can protect to some extent by putting some guardrails on. One of the platforms I used originally, one thing I was really excited about, this is about a year ago, was the fact that it could share URL. So for example, if you said, hey, Rob, have you got a job description for an account manager? It could go, yeah, sure, Todd, here you go. And it would share a URL. That was great, but it kept making them up. If you'd ask me for something I didn't have, you'd say, have you got a job description for an accountant, which I wouldn't have in my program? I'd go, sure, here you go. And it would give you a made up URL. You click on it and it would say, bad page. I was like, oh, this is crazy. This is not usable. So they were building guardrails in to make sure that the AI didn't do that. If you think about like guardrails on a bowling, your children, you got guardrails on a bowling alley. It's the same thing, really. It's how do I stop my AI from sharing fake news or made up stuff that isn't right? Because what the AI is trying to do is it's trying to put two and two together. And if it doesn't have the answer, it's trying to infer the answer. So it's being smart, but it's obviously going to get that wrong. One of the good things about building an AI on your own knowledge base is that that issue becomes way, way smaller, because it's not going to be making crazy stuff up. In fact, my my AI is trained to say, I don't know the answer to that. Reach out to real Rob. So it's trained to say, I don't try and guess, tell the person. And then the good thing is I can see in the back end the questions that are being asked. And then we're thinking, okay, can't answer that. I need to train my AI so it can answer that. So I'm learning sort of like that way. But the large language model that the generic sort of ChatGPTs uses, learning off billions of trillions of bits of data every day that are being input into it. So amazingly clever when you think about it, how much data it's working on. But it's also, I said, it risks sharing fake information. Then you get to a point where you think, well, I actually can't believe what it's sharing with me because last time I acted on that and it was completely wrong. And then people stop trusting it and go back to Google or something. So, but that's going to get better. I mean, but it's just that, tools are there for certain things, and I wouldn't want someone to use ChatGPT for what I'm doing. Someone said to me the other day, until I showed them a demo of it, and they said, oh, I listened to your podcast and I just assumed that it was just you built something on top of ChatGPT like you can do. And I was like, nope, this is a total platform that is totally designed to clone. I don't like the word clone, but to duplicate yourself based on your knowledge. And actually also based on your tone. So the way my coach responds hopefully is in a similar way to me, using the same kind of language. It's just not quite as animated. I'm not hugely animated, but it's not quite as animated as me yet. But it will use the tone of, my tone of voice, which is really good as well.
That's pretty cool. What platform did you settle on for now, at least for this?
I'm using a platform called Delphi.ai, DELPHI.ai, and a bunch of young guys in San Francisco started this company, been very successful at getting investment. Prior to that, I was using a British couple. I really liked them. And last year, it turned out that not only were we both in South Africa at the same time, but they were staying literally 2 minutes away from where I was staying. So we were able to meet up. And it was disappointing that I moved away from their platform because, again, a young couple that are, really ambitious with what they're doing. It's just that their platform was moving a bit more towards kind of enabling the user to interrogate it to create content. And I actually wanted my coach to be able to help my audience, not help me. It does help me because it can remember more than I can. So if I'm really honest with you, every time anyone emails me now with a question, the first thing I do is put it into Ask Rob Anything, and it gives me a pretty good answer. So because it remembers more than me. So it does get me from 0 to 60 really quickly. And then I just need to edit it to get me to the end point.
Well, and I think that's a really good tip too. If you've got a VA who's helping manage that.
Fantastic. Such a great.
That sounds like a really good idea.
Yeah, there was a bunch of byproducts from doing this that I hadn't even anticipated. And that is one of them, that my VA team have all got access to me. And if they don't do my social media, but if they were doing something, like they'll take my podcast and they will upload into Asana where I'll check it. Well, now they can run it through Ask Rob Anything. So there's like another check before it gets to me. So they can get access to me. I can get access to me as well. And I can get things done much quicker. And of course, my audience can, which is the primary motivation for doing this.
So one of the other questions I have is that when your clients are coming in and they know that you make heavy use of AI to deliver your program, does it create the expectation that it should be cheaper or that you have to lower your prices or that they're going to pay less for something like that?
I tell you what, Todd, if I'm really honest with you, it's even harder than that because people don't get it yet. I've had this conversation with a number of people who are doing something similar to me, and we all agree that people don't really understand it yet. So it's not even that a lot of people are resistant to using it. I mean, sometimes my audience will reach out to me and I'm thinking, why the heck didn't you just use Ask Rob Anything? That's such a great tool to help you here. But it's just not in their radar because they haven't incorporated it into their kind of daily workflow. So there is an element of education that needs to happen, which is why it's great for me to be on a podcast like this. But I'm also acutely aware that I don't want to be and can't be the educator of the market. I'm not big enough to do that. I can't afford to spend my life educating people for someone else to come along and then, the big boys need to do that. So I think we're even further back than that at the moment. I tried launching this tool as a standalone tool, like costing $30 a month. And, I had a few takers, but it was really difficult. I'm thinking, why don't people want this? This is access to my years of knowledge for next to nothing. And yet I couldn't sell. I could sell a £5,000 coaching program more easily than a £20 tools. So people don't get it yet. So there's an element of education, and absolutely people expect to pay less when they're not getting real me. What I tell people is that Ask Rob Anything is your first line of support, but I'm still your second line of support. I'm not going anywhere. I'm just telling you that you can get the knowledge you need quicker anytime you like. Ask any question. You're going to get it quicker from the AI tool than you are from me, because I'm doing a bunch of other things and I may not be available the moment you have a question. So I think, yeah, people do expect to pay less. People still want an element of live, of community and all that stuff in the coaching program, which we can still create because we still have the communities connected to it. But I'm hedging my bets here, or I'm banking on the fact that in the next year or so, this is going to change. So you talked about health earlier. I think people are going to get used to having a health coach on their phone, an AI coach on their phone much quicker than, for example, in my world, marketing agencies are going to get used to having an AI coach. I think health, well-being, fitness, mental health, all those spaces are going to get used to using this much quicker. And, I don't know how health is in the US, but we have a national health system here, and it has been in a crisis since the pandemic onwards, really. So if you want to get a GP appointment, it is really, really difficult here unless you take a private health. Well, imagine now that we can have a first line of defense where someone can talk to a doctor immediately because there's an AI doctor, and it's not going to be prescribing things, but it's going to be making recommendations. And then if there is something that needs to be escalated, it would pass that on to the real doctor. So I just feel like there's some amazing applications here that will help get rid of a bunch of, we have millions of backlogs of people trying to get access to health.
Well, I think that's great for traditional, but as someone who's really into more of the natural, naturopathic, biohacking kind of stuff, the idea of having an AI coach where I could upload all of my genetic testing and like gut testing and all the crazy things that I've done, and they can put it all together. And because that's really complicated to understand when you've had multiple things done and what you should be eating, what you shouldn't be eating, and all that kind of stuff. I think that's
yeah, and AI is very, very good at interpreting complex data. So that would be the perfect implementation. I think we just need to change. I don't like the word clone. It's got negative connotations to it. Unfortunately, Delphi uses that term, which is why I've been using it. I'm not even sure I like the word AI in this. It's more like a digital coach. I don't know what the right term is yet. I haven't figured it out. But there is a load of applications of it. And that, Leah, you've just given a really good one. I do actually think that health and well-being are going to be places where people get used to this much quicker. And there are people already working in those spaces. And like I said, I've been to the gym today, and I can have my workout on my phone, but wouldn't it be great if there's a coach there that's actually encouraging me, and I don't know, and finding a way of putting the data directly into the app, and then it telling me, what I need to do next, and helping me like holistically look at my world from a fitness, but also a health food perspective as well. I think that's really, really close to happening. So I think it's exciting. I think in my world, it's just a little bit slower. I'm really surprised that some of the big course creator gurus, people who are teaching you how to make courses, which are the ones who are really making money, I'm surprised they're not doing that at the moment. I really think one of the big players needs to say, I think Jeff Walker has done something with it, but he hasn't created a coach that actually supports his community. It's such an obvious thing to do. It's like, here you are in this community, here's a coach. One of the really neat things about my tool is that people can have a chat with it within the community. So we use Slack as our community, and you can actually talk to Ask Rob Anything from within Slack. He's just a member, and you just send a message to him or it to whatever, and it will respond within Slack. So it's integrated into WhatsApp and Discord and Telegram and text message, and as well as the traditional kind of audio, video, and web-based chat. So I think it's going to come. I do think people at the moment expect to pay less, which is sort of ironic because they're potentially getting more. But I think that's where we're at the moment. I think I totally acknowledge I'm fairly early in the game with this at the moment, and I'm sort of banking on it. Now, partly for me is because I do have retirement in my foreseeable future. So I am thinking about how do I continue to make some money when I'm not working? I've cut my working week down to 3 days a week already. And how do I keep making the same revenue and serve my audience and give the value without it involving me? So that's all where I'm at with it.
I think this is amazing. This has been an awesome conversation, Rob. I truly appreciate it. If people want to learn more about you, where should they head?
Easiest thing to do, guys, is go over to ask.dacostacoaching.co.uk. That's DACOSTA.co.uk and try my coach for free. So if you go to ask.dacostacoaching.co.uk, try the coach for free. You can have a video chat, an audio chat, and a text-based chat with it. You will be asked to input your email address at some point, but that's predominantly so that it knows who it's talking to. But you can try it out for free to start with. And so that's the best place to go. And my website's dacostacoaching.co.uk. There's lots more information on there. But, the best thing to do is for people to try it and they can see whether it's living up to what I'm positioning it as or not.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rob. We appreciate you.
Great stuff. I enjoy talking about this and hope your audience find it useful.
You've been listening to the Digital Trailblazer podcast. For show notes and information about today's guest, head to digitaltrailblazer.com. Now, if you love this episode, if you got some value, make sure you leave us a review and subscribe. And be sure to share this episode with anyone you know who could use help to build their business. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.